That's one clap, thank you. Are you guys excited? Yeah? Alright, so welcome to Pecha Kucha night. Perhaps if you don't know me, my name is Pito. On a daily basis, I am the events manager at Ubud. It's a co-working space at Monkey Forest Road. Once every month, I'm the party captain of Invasion Ubud. And once every 2 months, I'm sitting here as a CD holder of Pecha Kucha Night Ubud. So once again, welcome to Pecha Kucha Night 26, Ubud Writers and Readers Festival Special. Right, so Pecha Kucha, what is Pecha Kucha? Pecha Kucha means chit chat in Japanese. So the format of Pecha Kucha is 2020. 20 slides, 20 seconds. So each speaker will have 6 minutes 40 to talk about what you're going to talk about today. And the Pecha Kucha Night Ubud has been facilitated from day one by Ubud. And betelNut Ubud has always been our partner. They've been they have always been our venue since Pecha Kucha Night 2. And so I would like you to give a big applause to Tara, Odek, and also betelNut crew for their... Alright, so Pecha Kucha Night 26 is Ubud Writers and Readers Festival special. And tonight we have 6 special stars, the lineup of Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, coming from all around the world to speak on this stage tonight. We will have Kylie Bolton, Zohab Khan, Antoine Cassar, Peter van Dongen, Ida, and Hyeonseo Lee. Right, I think I've spoken more than 6 minutes 40. Actually, it's actually less than 6 minutes 40. So first of all, I'm gonna please help me to welcome Kylie Bolton. All right. Kylie Bolton is executive producer, documentary and drama online at SBS, where he commissions and produces online exclusive interactive content and cross-platform work. Kylie works with her colleagues to create unique and genre-defined content for the web. Projects that Kylie has produced for SBS have been selected for competition at IDFA, Sheffield Dog Fest, and South by Southwest Interactive, and have won a Walkie and numerous other local and international awards. So, please help me to welcome Kylie Bolton.
Thank you so much. So, have I started? Yeah, do you turn that around? It's all very exciting. It's like, you've got 20 seconds. Have I started? Yes? Oh, okay, so let me start. So interactive documentary storytelling or interactive storytelling. So obviously all storytelling is interactive. I'm talking about content and technology for the web. But first, I was going to talk about graduation, and for me, graduation from university, it was all about travel and writing. I was a writer, I was a reader, and I specifically travelled a lot in India, and I was really interested in representations, Asian representations, that came a lot from Britain, you know, so they did it well. They did stories of diaspora better than Australia did. In Australia, there was no representation on television when I was growing up, of Indian Australians particularly, which was my community, but everything was white. I loved the movies. Khan of Qureshi, I was watching, he was an 80s writer and screenwriter, but it didn't occur to me that I could actually create my own representation. And remembering I was a writer, so that's what I was thinking of doing, but then I love movies. So after studying cultural studies and thinking about representation and storytelling, I just borrowed a camera. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't borrow a camera as good as that. That's a better camera than what I had. But I followed a woman who was a Sikh Australian who was interested in telling stories, interested in making a film, and midway through that process, she found her Marwari Hindu husband-to-be. So all of a sudden I realised that the people I was trying to make a movie with were the people that were going to be in my movie. And I think the reason why Anu let me do it was because he was still trying to woo Ramona. I don't think he would have let me make a movie about him. What ended up being, I think, at least 2 years of shooting, and so there was a Wedding Sari 1, and then there was a Wedding Sari 2, and spoiler, they got married. They had 3 weddings. They had a registry wedding, a Sikh Australian wedding, and a Marwari massive wedding, and then in the second movie they had a baby. But what I realised about film, what I loved about film was the collaboration. Writing and also academia, which I was doing, is a very, very solitary endeavour. And people at this festival will know a lot more about writing than I do, because I don't really write now. I produce and I make films. So the picture that you just saw was my key collaborator in Sydney at SBS, which is a broadcaster in Australia. And we have a remit to tell the kind of stories that I didn't see when I was growing up. So we have a remit to tell stories about all communities in Australia, to be inclusive. And my remit as an interactive producer is to make projects that incorporate content, incorporate technology, and they're for the web. So why I'm at Ubud now is to talk about The Boat, which is a short story by Nam Lee that we adapted online as an interactive graphic novel. And that one, we didn't use any video, which is the first, really a first for my colleagues. It was all illustration. And I worked with an artist in New York, Matt Huynh, who is a Vietnamese-Australian artist. He is amazing. And he felt that Nam's story was his story. And that's something I realised when I was making The Boat. The Vietnamese diaspora in Australia, it started 40 years ago. It's the 40th anniversary this year. And everyone in that community knows someone who has been on that boat after the fall of Saigon and travelled to Australia, whether it was them themselves, or whether it's their family, or whether it's their friends. And so interactive documentaries or interactive programs that we do at SBS, they can be anything. So it's for the web, but The Boat was an interactive graphic novel. After 6-4, which is a project that I did here, it was about the events in Tiananmen Square, and it was really looking at news media from that time. Or the Cronulla Riots interactive doc that we did, which was looking at a really important moment in Australian history where there was a race riot in Sydney, and it was looking at ideas of race and racism and how Australians, different communities of Australians, literally fought each other on the beach and claimed to belong in a place. One community claimed to belong and one community was largely disenfranchised community in Western Sydney. Michael Muhammad Ahmed and Luke Carmen, they wrote 2 pieces for me for Cronulla Riots, and then recently I got to work with them again for a podcast series that I did called True Stories, where we asked writers to tell us true stories from high school, and we recorded them, and then we paired them with a sound designer. And the yellow image is Maxine Benny-Clark's image, amazing slam poet from Melbourne, and so we're now taking her audio podcast and transforming that again, working with an animator. So it's this idea of text and image or animation, video, illustration, mixing them together, mashing them up and seeing what you get. This one here is a data viz. I mean, it's just something that, and a different type of storytelling. Photo essays is something else that we're really interested in doing. You know, if you think of photo essays, I think you think of 1960s time life photo essays, and they're divine and they're beautiful. But nowadays we want to kind of bring them back and get young or emerging photographers to work with subjects they're interested in and to mix and match and bring in video or bring in illustration. The next one we're doing, which I'm really excited about, is another adaptation about a theatre piece. It's about boxing. And I tell you what, coming from an art background and then talking to boxers, it's sort of like, refuse to lose, that's Billy Dibb's saying. Or there's Lionel Rose and Johnny Famershon, who are 2 really important Australian boxers. And there's me and Jeff Fennick, which actually made my day. Those of you who know Jeff Fennick is a 3-time world title, and he's just the greatest guy. I'm like, can I film you again? So yeah, another version of Australian multiculturalism, but this time through boxing, which is a completely different thing. So thank you very much. See you later.
Kylie, how does it feel to be the first one in Pecha Kucha?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Just being in the audience for the first one. Yeah. I'm glad that's done. It's fun, but it's kind of like, oh, slide, move. So hopefully it made sense.
Is it more difficult than you thought?
Yeah, I think it's fun. You kind of get this adrenaline, but like you're trying to tell a story, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be linear, right? It can be fragmented, and that's just fun.
Right, cool. Is there any question from the audience? Are you on YouTube?
Our projects? Yeah, they're all online. Everything's online if you go to SBS. Yeah, everything. That's the thing with the web. They're online for as long as the technology allows. Once Chrome changes its browser, we could all be crashing, but until then, yeah.
Other question?
Ooh.
I have a question. So you came here, you said that you came here for the book, The Boat?
Yeah,
Did you want to talk about it?
Yeah, Sunday.
So Sunday, when is it going to, where is it going to be?
Indu's at, I think it's 10. But it's with Nam Lee, who is the real superstar of that project. He's the writer of The Boat.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's the draw card. Everyone should come to that for sure.
If there's no other question? No? All right, thank you, Kylie. Right, so see, it feels a bit different here. All right, so the next one to go is Zohab Khan. Zohab, can you come on stage? I think we should kind of like, yeah, exactly. I'm gonna give like a quote. If I do this, everybody has to give an applause, right? Right, so Zohab Khan originally comes from rural New South Wales, Australia, and he's a fourth-generation Australian of Pakistani heritage. His unique upbringing and experiences is woven into his poetry and natural comical storytelling ability. By the way, he's a recent champion of the Australian Poetry Slam. And yeah, so, are you ready?
I believe so.
Right. Please help me to welcome Zohab Khan.
Ready, set, let's do this. I have not timed this, so this is going to be really, really interesting. Chasing dreams. As Vito just said, my name is Zohab Khan. I'm the current Australian Poetry Slam champion, and the Poetry Slam Championships in Australia is something that I've been trying to win from the day that I found out about it. I'm going to talk really, really fast, so just in case I go over 6 minutes. I found out about it back in 2009 when I was still a university student in good old Wagga Wagga. That's me without a beard. Look how good looking I am. Anyway. So I rock up to my local library in 2009, never entered a poetry slam ever in my entire life. Guess what happens?
You won.
Of course I won, I'm a legend. And you don't have to clap, I only got 6 minutes. You can clap at the end, I promise. And statistically speaking, I was like, I've won 1 out of 1 of all the poetry slams I've entered. That's 100%. I thought I was absolutely amazing. So I rock up to state finals, right? In state finals, I'm like, yeah, let's jump up on stage. Statistically speaking, I'm gonna win this one too. Guess what happens? I forget my words. But that's okay, oh, look at me, I'm so good looking. And then I come back. I come back in 2012, no, 2011. In 2011, I win the first round, win the second round, win the first round of national finals. By this stage, I think I'm a legend. By this stage, I think I'm the greatest poet in the history of poets, right? Get up on the last stage, me and 4 other poets, guess what happens? Don't guess, I haven't got time. I forget my words. Fast forward, forgetting my words a few times. I rock up at this beautiful building in 2014. I get up on stage after winning the first round, second round, first round of national finals. Guess what happens? I win, because I'm a legend. And, no, don't clap, we haven't got time. It'd be really awkward if I finished and then we've got 2 minutes left. You guys can just clap if that happens. In 2012, 2 days before the state finals of the Australian Poetry Slam, I decided to do one of my favorite things and go to my favorite waterfall. I have 3 favorite things in life: poetry, motorcycles, and waterfalls. So one day, 2 days before the Poetry Slam, I wanted to jump on my motorbike, go on this beautiful ride through where I live in Wagga Wagga. So I jump on my motorbike, Wagga Wagga, jump on my motorbike, go through these amazing roads, and every now and then you'd see these amazing big trees. And every time I saw one of those big trees, you know those big trees? You know what I'm talking about? Those big trees, the way I think about those big trees, they've been around for the last 100, 150 years. And if they've been around for the last 100, 150 years, that means they were around when my great-grandmother was around. And if they were around when my great-grandmother was around, that means one day my great-grandmother inhaled oxygen and exhaled carbon dioxide. And that very same moment, there was a tree that inhaled carbon dioxide and exhaled oxygen. So as far as I'm concerned, this exact tree that I was hugging has kissed the lungs of my great-grandmother. See, that's how I think about things. I like to think about things, no, don't clap, later. The way I think about things is outside of that box. So back to my motorcycle. I'm on my way to my favorite waterfall. I love waterfalls. Waterfalls are great. I'm on my motorbike, just winding through these beautiful, amazing roads. And there's this one last turn. And guess what's waiting for me? A big hole in the road, and that happens. End up in hospital. I was about this far away from the edge of the road, which was just this tumble down into like this big gorge. I was this close to dying. And I remember the last thought that I had before I woke up. Sorry, the last thought that I had before I blacked out and hit the ground. It was, I really shouldn't be wearing shorts right now. And I remember the first thought that I had when I woke up. It was, my leg better be okay, because I've got a poetry slam to win in 2 days. And 2 days later, my mom said, don't go to this poetry slam, everything happens for a reason. She said, everything happens for a reason. It was more like that. But I said, nah, I've got to go do this. Because sometimes life puts brick walls in your way, and I ended up on that plane. And when I was on that plane, I decided to do a poem in front of the entire plane on the loudspeaker, because me and the flight attendant were flirting, and it was cool like that. So, do you want to hear the poem that I did? Cool. I didn't have a beard back then. They don't let bearded men at the front of planes anymore. Oh, we haven't got time for that. All right. Imagine a world where people are treated as equals. Imagine a world where people are not categorized by skin tone, religion, gender, or size. Imagine a world viewed through the innocence of a child's eyes. Imagine no sorrow when a soul dies, for a soul flies after closed eyes. We try to live our lives in New York minutes, because we be pushing our lives to new world limits and new world orders, while the old world still busy burying daughters. For they prefer sons. Only for those sons to pick up guns and kill sons of righteous ones, and those righteous ones kill their sons, that those sons kill their sons, so their sons kill those sons, and sons kill sons, and sons kill sons, and sons kill sons, and sons who was wrong. For there is no art in war, for art is love, and there's no love in war. Imagine we loved more. And loved for the sake of love, for the love of love is the best love above all. Imagine a world of no wars and hearts with no doors exposed raw. Imagine the life of another being the life of a brother. Imagine every embrace filled with the love of a mother's. Imagine a world of no strangers and only kindred neighbors. It's about time hatred gets outdated and our differences are celebrated. For our forefathers waited, but we, the people, shall wait no more. Today we take our stand. Imagine no French burqa bands and bikinis in Afghanistan. Imagine Hong Kong harmonica and white Christmas Mecca. Imagine no offshore refugee process prisoners and a history of Aborigine prime ministers. Imagine Palestinians marry Israelis and make beautiful beige babies. Imagine a world where people are treated as equals. Imagine a world where people are not categorized by skin tone, religion, gender, or size. Imagine.
Alright, Zohab.
Thanks,
That was
man.
really great.
Thank you. About halfway through, I realized there's people up there. I was like, whoa, people. That was great.
Alright. Anyone has a question?
like John Lennon hadn't said it all. It feels like John Lennon hadn't finished saying it all.
It feels like John Lennon hasn't finished saying it all.
Hello. Yeah, John speaks to me in his dream, in my dreams. So yeah. Cool.
At what age did you write or did you hold your first poetry?
At what age did you first start your first poetry?
The first ever poem that I ever performed in front of anyone was in year 7. I was 13 years old, and I was a troublemaker. I got in trouble literally every single day when I was in school, and me and my best friend Servan, who's Filipino, and in year 7 when we were 13 he was about this big. We're still best friends and he's about this big. When we walk down the street, people think he's my son. It's great. And so me and him one day decided to go to our deputy principal's office, and to cut a long story short, well, I haven't got 6 minutes now, I can talk all night. Anyway, we go to our deputy principal's office and like knock on the door and bolt out of there. And our deputy principal is this big scary man called Mr. Bell, who's like, looks like Frankenstein kind of, and everyone's scared of him because he's been working at the school for the last 60 years or so. And we're thinking we're complete gangsters because we run to the complete other side of the school. We're like, oh, that was so cool, bro. Such gangsters, like we got away with the crime of the century. And about 2 minutes later, Mr. Bell comes up, this shadow like Frankenstein. He's like, yo, come with me. And he gave us detention for that entire week because we had to stand outside of his door and protect it, just in case anyone else knocked on it. But I'm all about deals, and the deal was, if someone else knocks on it and we catch them, they take our place. So we tricked this really dumb kid into knocking, and only 3 days. The reason I tell you this story is, that was what I wrote my first ever poem about, and would you like to hear it? It's really short. Knock, knock, knock on Mr. Bell's door. Knock, knock, knock. He knocked us to the floor. He gave us detention for 7 days. And you know what? I reckon he's gay. And I tell that story in a lot of high schools, and I always give it a disclaimer that 13-year-old me thought it was okay to use the word gay in a derogatory way. 45-year-old me doesn't think that at all. You know, I know a lot better than that. I moisturize every day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right, the next one is Antoine Cassar. Everybody should. Right. So Antoine Cassar is a multi-spoke translator, editor, cultural organizer, and activist for migrants' rights and the universal freedom of movement. He published Passport, a long poem published in 9 languages, and it has been adapted for the stage in Malta, France, and Italy. Through Anti-Passport or Passport Project, he supports refugees and asylum seekers. Please help me to welcome Antoine Cassar.
Selamat malam. I'm going to be talking about borders, passports, what they do to people, and creative forms of resistance to them and how to break through them in different ways. I'm from a small island which is not on this map. It's not on many maps. An island called Malta, just south of Italy. That's my Maltese passport, the real one. And I come from a small country, and I've been humiliated in different airports around the world, which is one of the reasons why I wrote an anti-passport in the form of a poem, which I'll be presenting on Saturday at Casa Luna. I've been humiliated in a village on the border between Peru and Bolivia called Casani, in front of a bunch of tourists. I've been humiliated at Amsterdam. I was accused of having a fake passport. My real passport, which is not fake. And I was interrogated at the Denpasar airport last Saturday because I had 200 poetic passports in my suitcase, 100 in my rucksack, and I had to explain over and over again, it's a poem. It's not dangerous. So we have this idea, this romantic idea perhaps, or we're taught this when we're children, that a passport gives us freedom to travel. In reality, what a passport does, it decides who travels and who doesn't. And our passports, they don't belong to us, they belong to our national governments. They can take them away at any time. It's a question of race, it's a question of class on a global scale. It's the difference, for example, between immigrant and expat. What is it? Well, white people are expats. Non-whites tend to be called immigrants, right? And there's this whole capitalist pyramid even when it comes to migration, and at the very bottom you have the illegalization of migration leads to people having to work illegally for a pittance in places like Rosarno in the south of Italy. And this is good for certain employers and for the economy. Then we have people who really need to travel, refugees fleeing wars, for example, crossing the Mediterranean in rickety boats, and the Mediterranean Sea has become a cemetery. This is a cliche now. This has been going on for over 10 years. There's a map of the world from the perspective of a refugee, the Mediterranean Sea. If you look at the Mediterranean Sea on a map, you'll see it's the shape of a dead body in fetal position, and one artist has illustrated that. 2013, 366 Eritreans drowned off the coast of Lampedusa. This is a very touching image. It's a young couple embracing at the bottom of the sea, just off Lampedusa. A playful haiku, okay. The airport. Boy leaps over the customs checkpoint. He knows no borders. We need to be imaginative. We need to be playful when it comes to borders in order to start erasing them and removing them. This was at a refugee solidarity rally in Luxembourg a few weeks ago. As another haiku, people cross borders. It's been that way ever since. Borders crossed people. People came first, borders came later, obviously. Forms of resistance to borders and border regimes. This is, you can do street theater. So we were protesting the opening of a detention center in Luxembourg 4 years ago by chaining ourselves and, as you can see, shutting our mouths. We organized two solidarity concerts in front of the detention center for refugees inside the center to hear us so that they know we're not alone. Many musicians and dancers came. Another method of resistance is through walking. We've been migrants ever since the human race started walking out of the Great Rift Valley. This is a poster from a refugee and activist march from Strasbourg to Brussels. It took 1 month. I'm part of a collective called No One Is Illegal Luxembourg. We provided logistical help to the refugee march. We published an artistic newspaper about borders and human rights. We've interviewed Joe Sacco, a graphic novelist who's also Maltese. He has a chapter about migration in Malta in the book Journalism. Other methods of resistance: reclaim public space from the privatization and the uniformization of it all through banners, graffiti. That's an Israeli-Palestinian wall, Control, Alt, Delete. Street stickers. I was in Lampedusa about a month ago, and it was a kind of activist meeting. We went to protest at the detention center and ended up having a spontaneous concert with these girls, teenage girls from Gambia who had just arrived a couple of days before. The world is not round. The world will not be round until all passports are equal. The world is a polyhedron of nation states. But I would like to believe that there's a new borderless generation yet to hatch out of the egg. And I finish with this photo I took yesterday of a Bali, an Ubud monkey going over the fence. No monkey is illegal. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Antoine. Anyone from the audience has a question? No? Yeah. Someone? Yeah. Up there. Yeah. The question is, what's the solution?
What's the solution to the border regime? Open them. Open the borders. Well, I mean, it's practical from, if we're going to talk about an economical point of view, because that's what people are worried about. People at the top of the pyramid are worried that they're going to lose their privileges. There have been studies by economists in Harvard and Cambridge and other places that say that if all borders were to be completely open, not only would wealth be better distributed, but global GDP, right, would double in less than 10 years. So not only would wealth be better distributed, there would be more wealth to go around. You know? And surely opening the borders is more practical and more humane than pushing people to their deaths in the Mediterranean Sea. You know, I think that human life is more important than the sovereignty of a nation state. Can I say something? Just so I mentioned the poem, the passport poem. So if you'd like to come and listen to this, it's on Saturday at Casa Luna, 6:15. I'll be reading it in English. There will be also an Indonesian version, and maybe some in Balinese as well. And I collaborate with collectives and associations, grassroots, in different countries. So here, 33% of the profits from the sale of the passport booklet will go to, it's not really an NGO, it's an association called Swaka, based in Jakarta, who provides help to refugees in Indonesia, and does a lot of advocacy work as well.
So that's Saturday at Casa Luna, is it?
Saturday, 6:15, Casa Luna. You're all very welcome. Thanks.
All right.
Remember, no monkey is illegal.
Right, thank you, Antoine. The next on stage, the next one that will come on stage is not actually on the lineup. He's a special guy that thinks that he wears better shirt than me tonight. There he is. Want to say something?
That's all the intro I get. Wearing a shirt like this, that's all it gives me. Welcome, my name is Steve, everybody. I'm one of the co-founders at Ubud, a co-working space in town that has put on this event most months for the last 3 years. So normally at kind of halftime I get up and tell a little bit about what's happening at Ubud and around. But first I just wanted to say I love the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival. It is my favorite. I've lived here for 6 years. It is my favorite event of the year, hands down. You know, I love the people it brings into town. I love the energy and the kind of questions that start getting asked. I love the way it helps spark, you know, free expression and a lack of censorship. I mean, this is something that I think for all of us, we've all held dear. So before I say anything about us, I just want to say to Janet, I know she's not here, and to all the organizers of the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, thank you. You make this place better. Okay, so at Ubud we do a lot of events, not just PechaKucha, of course. There's a lot going on. We have about 300 members from 40 countries working on really interesting projects. We have about 30 events per month, but we do a few big ones. So in the next few months, this coming Saturday night, it's Halloween. We do 2 big parties a year. One is at Halloween and one is in June for our anniversary. The theme this year is Carnival. So the Evil Carnival is coming to Ubud, so if you're around and looking to party, it's on this Saturday night at Ubud. Another one of my favorite events, this is called Startup Weekend. It's a global entrepreneurial event. It's like 54 hours to build a company. All talk, no action, maximum 75 participants. I think we've got about 10 or 15 tickets left. It starts with a pitch night on Friday. People form teams around the best ideas. People work like mad for the next 48 hours to present their product that they built in 2 days to a crowd of judges. So it's a really, really high pressure, really fun entrepreneurial event. And entering its second year is the Co-working Unconference Asia. So we created this event last year. We had around 130 people from 30 countries. We're looking at around 200 people this year, and we're going to be looking and exploring the topic, the future of work. So if anybody's around and interested in that, let you know. Other than that, if you want to get in touch, that's how you do it. If you're in town only for the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, welcome. If you're in town longer and want to speak, get in touch with Vito and he'll look at doing that for the next event. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Steve. Right, so we have our fourth speaker. His name is Peter van Dongen. Can you get on stage? An applause. What's up with everyone today? Are you guys tired or? It feels like, because normally we start at 7:30 and this time it starts at 8:30. Maybe, I suppose maybe that's the reason. But, right, so Peter van Dongen is a comic artist and illustrator. His mother and grandparents came from Indonesia. Where from Indonesia?
From Ternate, Maluku Utara.
Oh, Radio Maluku. All right. So his graphic novels Rampokan Java and Rampokan Selbes are set at the time of the revolution in Indonesia, and it was translated into French, German, and Indonesian.
And in English.
And English
today.
Yeah, and today is it?
Asa English.
Right. So let's hear more about Rampokan. Please help me to welcome Peter van Dongen.
Thank you. Well, this my first visit to Indonesia in 1992 was about this research work for my upcoming novel, graphic novel, Rampokan. It was here in Ubud, at the Pasar Ubud down here. But in 1992 it was not that big as it now used to be. And so I made it just sketches, research. So I went with a boat, with a kapal from Benoa Harbor to Makassar, because my mother, she lived also in Makassar, in Sulawesi. And actually I made that illustration years later after my journey, but I took some pictures I made then, I combined them. And this was my impression of this journey on a boat. And about Indonesia, we think also about the jungle, sawah, Balinese, or wayang kulit. And this one, I made this illustration for the Indonesian publisher Gramedia. It's about from a Dutch writer. She was born in the 1920s, and it's the Tea Lords, and will appear soon. Now this is my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandfather, he was Orang Indo. He's half Indonesian, but mixed with European blood 300 years ago. My grandmother, she was half Chinese, half Muluku Atara from Halmahera. He was a soldier, and he's beheaded by the Japanese. So my mother, up here at the right, the little one, but the middle one, she never knew her father. She had only a couple of memories, and that's what she shared with us. She got 4 boys, me as a twin brother as well. So when she had all these stories, and I had to make up a new story about a comic after my debut, I thought about her homeland, where she was born. And she was living in this house after the war, actually in a garage up there. And so the final thing is of that, if you're doing research for something that's happened in the past, you do have books, library. Nowadays you have Google. And that time it was only old pictures and photos. So you see there, I used that building, that house where my mother lived, once there in the comic, in the page. You see up there, I drew the garage. It wasn't there on the building, because the aunt, her aunt, she was living in the house, and they were living in the garage. So this is the final cover for the Indonesian and Dutch version. The English one is another one. But what I like about the Dutch Indies, about the graphics, it's also the typo and the silhouette and the graphic design. So as a comic, I use these kind of old-fashioned things. And I called it Rampokan, because Rampokan means tiger fight. Rampok Macan, Macan is tiger. And it was a ritual that held was on Java. It has to be to kill the beast. And the animal, the tiger, it was the beast. It was after the Ramadan. So they killed the Javanese weapon with spirit. They killed all these tigers, so the land would be free for diseases. And it was a nice kind of a metaphor for my comic Rampokan. Of course, Rampokan is about the independence struggle against the Dutch by the Indonesians. So the tiger, he stands for the Orang Belanda, for the ruler, for the Dutch colonial ruler. And the Javanese, they were very succeeded, if you see this picture, to killing all the beasts. And that's why there are no tigers and no panthers on Java and Bali. So I use it as a metaphor for my comic, for my graphic novel. Because otherwise it would be too much a Vietnam kind of story with the soldiers and everything. And I could use something different. And there's also something different I found in the book. It's 50 civilians and some other prisoners they taken from prison by the Dutch military in 1947. And I'm brought up in Amsterdam, and during World War II there were a lot of Germans, of course. And that's what I heard about the Germans, they were nasty. But if you find out that the Dutch military, and I never had it on Dutch history lessons, did the same what the Germans did in a way in Europe, and Americans as well, in a kind of way in Vietnam. 20 years earlier, the Dutch military did that. Hey man, there's no page. Well, it's a page 12, but during our first technical session there was a page, but it's a page, you must imagine a cinema, a nice cinema in Jakarta, Cinema Rex. It's a classical old Dutch building, because it's not only bad what I think about Dutch, of course, but when the Dutch were here, they made also beautiful things. I mean, comparing what this building, Savoy Homan, it's a hotel in Bandung. So it's a thing what I like to share with all my readers as well. Not only bad things, it's otherwise to black and white. And I'm in between. I'm not black and white. I'm together. So there's another building there in Kota Station in Jakarta. So I love to draw. So I love to draw this kind of Tintin style work. And here in Indonesia, they like also Tintin. So when I'm here, I'm kind of a Tintin in Indonesia. So this is the last thing, the 21. So after the independence, Holland became on its own, Indonesia became independent. And what did the Indonesians still, they used, it's a fake post stamp of course, but they used still old original stamps, but just they blanked the Indonesia. And that's my mother when she came there with the widow mother, because her father was beheaded. She came there in Rotterdam in the 1950s. They looked very happy after what happened to them here during the wartime in Indonesia. So she passed away. The middle one up here, she passed away already. And this same woman who was standing in front of that house in Makassar, she was also going to Holland. And Holland, it seems to be very cliche, but everybody does this. Americans, every tourist in Holland, they go to Volendam, this village. I've never been in Volendam because it's only for tourists. But they were there, and I made this illustration for a magazine. So I used this family picture to make this illustration about Dutch Indies literers. So it's something I still use in my work, just my family background, and it gives me it's more complete now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Peter. Anyone has a question? Yeah? When you translate to other languages, is that you translate yourself?
No way, no way.
So the question is, when you
there
translate...
are no, no, I'm not just a graphic artist. It's 13 years of work, what I've done. No, of course, I wrote the story. Of course, I wrote my own lines and my text, but there's always a translation from here in Indonesia or in England, or there was some in France, there was or German. No, it's not. I'm good in drawing, but I'm not good in languages.
So is the language of being a graphic artist a more powerful language to you than just that of words?
It's something different. I'm the one who's making drawings, so that's the way of my expression. But a real writer making real books, he's just a writer, and somebody who's making moving pictures, he's a film maker. So it's something different, but we are all storytellers.
Any question?
Sudah?
I have a question actually. When you're creating this illustrator and also graphic design work, you're basically the book Rampokan. What are the messages that you're actually trying to share with the people? Like, what is an inner message that you want people to see?
Well, what I said when I started this project about the homeland of my mother and grandparents, I knew from history lessons at school when I was young in the 1970s, 80s. I heard about, of course, the Germans, what they did in Europe, but I never. When I started with the project, I found this whole world of beautiful things and bad, really bad, dark things. And that's what my wondering about this, that's the thing what I like to share with the readers, because my wondering, and even also the bad thing what some Dutch military did. Because we never, still nowadays in Holland, if there is something on the news about a picture like that, what I was showing you there, still there's a very fight, people don't believe that real Dutch white people are doing that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ben. Right, so next one is this lovely lady over there. Can you come on stage? They suggest me that you should use this microphone. Right. This lovely lady is called Ida. So Ida, she is the creative director and founder of the female art fundraising collective called Sisters for Sisters. And she's the latest recipient of New York City of UNESCO City of Literature grant. Ida comes from Singapore. She has half Indian, half Malaysian background. And she built cultural convention by leaving her family home and moving to Australia. At what age did you move to Australia?
I was 22.
You were 22 when you moved to Australia. Okay. And when she moved to Australia, she found a deep love for bushwalks and community engagement. She was also gifted with an Excellence Award for her work in community building through the arts by Victoria Government House. So talking about transcending whiteness, please help me to welcome Ida.
Hi. So, about a week ago, I told a friend of mine at a cafe near where I live in Melbourne that I was going to be doing this presentation. And she asked me, what are you going to be talking about? And I said, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I think I'm going to speak about the phenomenon of skin bleaching in countries like Jamaica, Nigeria, India, Philippines, as well here in Indonesia. Why do people feel like they have to have fairer skin in order to feel beautiful? And she said that we're living in a really volatile time right now. And she said, Ida, I noticed that you always like to bring up this topic of race. She said that we're living in a time of refugee crisis with heightened racism in countries like America and Australia, and that the way forward is for all of us to collectively focus on our similarities and not on our differences like our skin color. See, this friend of mine is a beautifully loving white woman who was passionate about finding solutions to create a just world for all. But she was still unable to see how everyday conversations raising awareness on privilege and racial bias could be part of that very solution. See, my father is a second-generation Indian born in Singapore, and my mom is a Bumi Putra, a word to describe the Malay race. That's them at their wedding day. And even from as young as the age of 8 and 9, I remembered feeling very ashamed of being Indian, of not wanting to identify as one. When I was growing up in Singapore, the Indians were frequently stereotyped as dirty and smelly people. The Malays were stereotyped as lazy, and the Chinese were considered illustrious. And white expats were the most favored of all the races, and as crazy as it was when I was growing up, society made me believe that white people were better than me. Backs became straighter, and people were on their best behavior when a white person walked into the space. Even on magazines and on TV, Chinese and white faces dominated the mainstream media. So as a brown kid growing up in an environment that favored fairness, I quite often felt invisible and unattractive. Even in Bollywood, as a legacy of Western imperialism, Eurocentric versions of beauty mapped the standard, and every little girl not fitting the mold found herself struggling to affirm her own beauty. And that is why when my mom asked me if I wanted to put this cream on my face, my hands, and my legs that will make me fairer, I said yes! I was so excited. I was only 10, and I didn't realize how toxic this cream was, and I didn't realize the bigger historical context that made everyday people aspire to whiteness. An article in The Guardian said that the skin bleaching industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry pushing the idea that whiteness equates with beauty. Unlike fake tan, skin whitening creams base beauty on a racial hierarchy, fueling intolerance. In a country such as India, the dominance of fair skin has both a colonial and a caste legacy, and the global narrative is that those at the top of society have fair skin. So fast forward a couple of years, into my early 20s, I came to Australia and I found that white people loved me, and I reveled in it. It felt so good to be loved by the very people that everyone else was trying to be. They told me that I was open, I was unintimidating, I was cute, I was brown, and I totally lapped it up. I went from being very invisible in my country to being highly visible because of the exotification of my skin color. And to be honest, I took advantage of the fact that I was finally being viewed as beautiful. I was finally getting the attention. It was really good for my ego, and it even built on my self-esteem. But it took a few years of my own evolution, my unpacking, to ask myself, why did I feel the need to be accepted by white people before I could see myself as beautiful? And why do so many brown and black girls around the world still feel that way till this day? And that question brings me back to my earlier conversation with my friend at the cafe. Why I bring up the topic of race with my poetry or with my friends is because I feel it's instrumental in helping me to acknowledge my journey through life as a woman of color. It allows me to also reclaim a true sense of who I am, and to also bring awareness to this issue that we are still currently facing. Back then I was unable to see how my own sense of identity had been dictated by a dominant culture that still put whiteness at the top. And as I began to open my eyes and see this system that was invested in maintaining the racial divide, I saw that people that most benefited from it were quite often the most oblivious to it. And they say things like, oh, I don't see color. Unfortunately, we still live in a world that favors the fairest among us. And acknowledging that difference is an important first step to working towards true equality. And the next step, I feel, is to create a culture where we can feel comfortable to have conversations around race and what it means to us. How do we do this in the open, as uncomfortable or as challenging as that may be, instead of only in our groups, so that people that need to engage in these conversations the most can allow their hearts to be open to it. Earlier this year, I received a UNESCO grant to go to New York, and I trained with Alana Bell and Lauren Whitehead from Dialogue Arts Project, and the core of their work is using creative writing and poetry as an entry point into very difficult conversations around race. It's to help people to lean into the discomfort, to suspend judgment of one another, and to begin the process of engaging in difficult dialogue around race, difference, identity, and gender. And I feel like these conversations can help us to slowly dismantle the structures that exist that keeps separating us. It's going to help mothers realize that they don't have to tell their daughters to stay out of the sun. It's going to help us to feel beautiful just as we are, helps us feel equal just as we are, regardless of the skin that we were born into. Thank you so much.
Wow, that was really good message. It was awesome. Anyone has a question? Quite an audience, right? Really?
So why do you think you didn't experience racism in Australia? There is racism in Australia as well. So what was it?
Can I repeat the question so everybody can hear? So why did you feel that you didn't feel any racism in Australia?
I did experience racism, but it's not like what my Sudanese friends would experience. You know, it's more like a subtle, patronizing tone of like, wow, you speak really good English. You know, or being at a Kohl's checkout counter and having the woman at the checkout counter be really friendly to the white person before me, and then not give me the same kind of positive energy. And that's what people in Australia feel quite often. You know, when you start opening your eyes and experiencing it, then you see. And I work with newly arrived migrant youth, and these are young people from Iraq, from Iran, and a lot of them didn't come here with the language skills that I do. And when I first came to Australia, I was very open, and I really wanted to embrace this Western culture because I felt like I wanted to fit in. And a lot of the young people that I work with now, they don't have that same confidence that I did. Or I was actually faking it, but they didn't have that, and they have a really hard time. They have a really hard time, and so that's what my message is about.
Right. Any other question? Yep.
Did you also find racism from people who are not white?
Yes, absolutely. I found there's lots of interracial racism as well. I had an experience of wanting to connect with the African community in Australia, going like, hey you guys, I do spoken word too, let's build, let's connect. And they're like, oh, sorry, you're not black. You know, and I at first was feeling really just rejected, and I'm like, you guys don't get it, I'm with you, you know, I'm all about building and understanding, but they grew up really marginalized and feeling that finally they have a space that's an all-black space, and they're really protective of it, and I feel that that's the ugly side of racism. It makes people clamor to get a sense of belonging, and also that's why, like, Indian people can be racist towards Africans, and Africans can be racist. You know, it's just human nature, but we can transcend that.
Yep.
You read Bernardine Evaristo's Blonde Roots?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's kind of turns it on the whole story on its
What's the name of the book, sorry?
It's called Blonde Roots, B-L-O-N-D-E.
Blonde Root. So.
And it's set in dystopian, it turns kind of the whole war, the underground roles in America on its head, whereby it's the whites who want the blacks who are running, you know, America, and or, you know, the blacks who are dominant, and so the whites all want to have, they are the ones who've got blonde roots, and in order to fit in, they have their noses, you know, made so that they're, you know, more African. They have their hair, they got, you know, dreads put into their hair, and their roots are blonde.
Yeah.
And they're like, they don't fit in because they're white.
Yeah.
And it turns the whole story of, you know, kind of what it means to
Sometimes
be a
when
dominant race. And she's a fantastic poet, and this is a fantastic novel. It won the Alternative Orange Prize or the Alternative Booker Prize or something like that. You should definitely read that book.
Yeah.
Everybody should. It kind of turns your perceptions on what it means to fit in on its head. It's fabulous.
Amazing.
Bernardine Evaristo, Blonde Roots.
Yeah. Can I just respond to that really quickly, if you have time? So, not that, but it reminds me of a conversation that I had with my friend when I wanted to explain to her about my experience with skin bleaching, and she's like, oh, but it's the same, because as white people, we also want to put tan because we think that that's more beautiful. But I think that the skin bleaching phenomenon has the weight of institutional racism behind it. You know, and that's why it's something that we have to address.
Right. No, it's just funny for me because I was thinking about my father back home that is still actually like buying all this bleaching stuff, and it's just in the society kind of. So, but anyway, I'm just gonna add about that. Well, thank you so much, Ida.
Thank you.
And Eric. Right. So we have the last speaker. The last speaker is actually here. Her name is Hyeonseo Lee, and he comes from North Korea. Right, Hyeonseo, can you come on stage? So Hyeonseo Lee, he escaped the totalitarian regime in North Korea. He had recently completed writing her memoir called The Girl with Seven Names, a North Korean defector story. He has also given testimony about North Korean human rights in front of a special panel of the UN Security Council. And he's speaking about North Korean human rights and North Korean refugee issues. So what's it like to escape the North Korea? Here it is, Hyeonseo Lee.
From the moment I was born, I was fed propaganda, and I believed that our dictator was God, who even didn't go to the bathroom or smoke cigarette or drank alcohols. And in his funeral, I was really shocked in 1994 because I never thought our dear leader could die because he was God. And in North Korea, we are required to hang their pictures in every house, and the government officers would come to every home with white gloves and then check for the dust on the pictures. And we thought that was normal life. And the regime taught us to hate Americans. From the kindergarten, we learned that Americans are our primary enemies who killed many North Korean people. So we have a lot of pictures like that all around the countries in the school. That's why our hostility towards Americans was so high, and we didn't consider them as a human being. And if we meet them, we have to kill them off. So every year on Children's Day anniversary, we practiced a game like how to stab and kill the American bastards. Because and the young children are sang songs like kill the Yankee bastards. And for us it was normal because we never learned like Americans. The one word was American bastards. This is a pleasure group, pleasure squad about dictator. The young girl in North Korea are selected all around the country from the middle school to high school to serve our dear leader. And these women are just measured, including legs, waist, breast, even nipples, and then they become sexual slavery. And many people ask me this picture whether this is true. It is true because this is our dictator's funeral, and people cried with their heart because we believed they saved us from the America. That's why we just respect them with our heart. When I was growing up, I saw whole entire family disappeared in the middle of the night. One of the family members complained about the government in the private meeting, and then they were sent to the political prison camp where over 1,000 people still living in prison camp. And we grew up with constant public executions, and it's mandatory to watch it. And I saw my first public execution when I was 7, as a man was hanging by his neck under a railroad bridge. And I saw another public execution during the famine when the authorities shot a man in his head in front of his family. So the constant executions were reminding me that I shouldn't do anything to disobey our leaders, otherwise I will be killed horribly, exactly the person, the victim in front of me. But the biggest killer in North Korea is starvation, which has killed more than 1 million North Korean people. During the famine, if we go to near the bridge or near the train station, we could easily see those dead bodies, and the bodies didn't removed, so the smells of decomposing of bodies were everywhere. So people started fleeing the country to China in search of food, and the regime enhanced the border security by setting landmines, barbed wire fences, including releasing military trained dogs. Even these days, they are shooting the defectors whoever crossing the border during the daytime. But still, people crossing the border with their life. So I was living right next to the border with China. So sometimes when I go to the border in the morning, I saw dead bodies floating down the river. And yeah, it's really shocking to me. But in the end, I crossed the border in 1997 when I realized that North Korea may be not the paradise. So I crossed frozen river by crossing the ice. And but after arriving in China, I feel that's not paradise for defectors at all, because the Chinese government, because the ally between North and China, the Chinese government kept repatriating North Korean defectors back to North Korea. They even know that defectors will be tortured and publicly even punished, even imprisoned. So I had personally horrible experience. And the girls in China also sold as sex slaves. But this is a very, despite all the misery in North Korea, still there's a positive news these days that people are awakening from their brainwash. But the regime brought the new cell phone system, which they need a hard currency. That's why they brought the cell phone system, and I believe that will hurt the regime in the end. And defectors and international organizations, people, they are keep sending helium balloons through the DMZ, through the border, filled with information and South Korean dramas or Hollywood movies to help North Korean people awakening from their brainwash. And these days, a total 28,000 North Korean defectors came to South Korea, sought asylum to South Korea, but they still have many problems because of we came to motherland in South Korea, but still we are treated like a alienation and prejudice and jobless. Many problems, and the suicide rate is very high. So there's many defects. Some defectors these days are trying to escape to North Korea again from South Korea. So they appeared in the Pyongyang's press conference and they're giving the interviews. But we believe that these people didn't go by themselves. They were lured by the North Korean agents, and they were threatened. If they don't go back to North Korea, their family will be in huge trouble. That's why they did went back to North Korea. After 14 years of long separation with my family, in the end we were united in South Korea in 2010 after having many problems in China and in Laos. But when I was living in North Korea and hiding in China for 10 years, I never thought I could share my horrible story with the world. I felt so burdened. But last July, I published my memoir around 20 countries, and that's why I'm here. That memoir was writing about my long journey to freedom and rescuing my family and guiding them to freedom. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hyeonseo. Anyone from the audience wants to ask anything?
Yeah.
Who says yes? Oh,
There's a conscious international community here. Is there anything we can do to help?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do here to help?
That's why I'm giving speeches around the world asking help. North Korean people right now inside North Korea, they need outside help. They are the most brainwashed people in this world, but they need outside help. But still, we are ignoring the problem right now. So while we are ignoring the third dictator Kim Jong-un, he's doing horrible human rights abuses to people, and every day he's putting people in public execution and sending to political prison camp. We know that 2 years ago he killed even his own uncle. It's so insane what he's doing. So I'm asking people to, sharing our story, tweeting and just sharing from social media, let many people know about this reality until nobody can say, yeah, we didn't know actually. Actually, many people say they know that North Korea, we are suffering under the dictatorship and we have nuclear power issues. But many people, they didn't actually realize how North Korean people are horribly suffering under the regime. So just urging your government that you care about North Korean human rights issues. So let them just pressure on China. Let them stop supporting North Korea and stop repatriate North Korean defectors back to North Korea. That's all what I wanted to ask.
Is there anything we can do individually?
Is there anything that we can do individually here?
Opposed to relying on our government?
There's many organizations, individual organizations, whether in the United States or European countries in South Korea, they are helping North Korean defectors escaping from either North Korea or in China, because I believe there's more 300,000 North Korean defectors are hiding in China, but they don't know how to come to South Korea and they don't have money, everything. So those organizations are helping, but they need money. So by bringing them, so I'm asking to donating those organizations will be the best answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
How did you get out?
How did you get out?
It's a long story. Yeah. Because I was believing that dear leader was the best. I thought, whenever I received a gift from my parents, I never thanked them, and I just hugging the gift, and I just bought their pictures, which we hang every home, because I believed all the good things came from the dear leader. So for me, the dear leader considered the top, and my parents was below. But we had a big famine from 1995 that I saw people dying on the streets. It doesn't make sense to me. And then at night, I watched the Chinese TV by myself, secretly in my home. And then the Chinese TV completely transformed my life. To me, from Chinese TV, I realized actually there looked like a paradise. One thing I realized, maybe North Korea is not the best in the world. That's why I wanted to see the outside. Not only from TV, I wanted to take with my own eyes. That's why I crossed the border. But many defectors, as you can see the picture, many people crossing the border with their life. But I was very lucky in that situation because I was living right next to the border. I had friends with the border guards, which people consider that they are the most horrible border guards who's killing North Korean defectors these days. But we were friends. That's why they just helped me to cross the border, and then they guided me where to cross. But they never knew that I would not return, because certainly I didn't know myself. It will be the last meeting with my hometown. It will be last meeting with my family. That's why I just crossed the border.
Okay. And then Martha.
Where is your family now?
So where is your family now?
As you can see in the picture, I blocked my mom and brother's face. That even in my memoir, I couldn't show their face. We found real freedom right now by living in South Korea. So we've been separated for 14 years, but 2010, I took huge risk by bringing them out. So actually many people ask me that, what was most difficult part of writing your memoir? My answer was, when I guiding my family, especially from the border between North Korea and China, all the way China, from this side to Kunming, the other side, it was very difficult because we know that if we were caught by the Chinese police, we know the answer. After repatriate to North Korea, that I will be in public execution because I was having South Korean passport. I will be considered the huge betrayer, and my family, because of me, they will be in political prison camp. They will never see the light in their life. So we know the consequences. That's why that was the most painful memory. We had many problems with the Chinese police. I don't know whether my wisdom or strength or bravery, whatever, every time it happened the miracle, and then in the end, my family had imprisoned in Laos. So that's why, actually this is my first trip in Southeast Asia, besides Laos. I feel like I didn't go to Laos for travel. It's a really painful memory. That's why I'm staying here and bring my family right now living in South Korea after 1 year old long project. But I don't have to hide their face since we found the real freedom. But I have all relatives inside North Korea, so the regime track all the single steps, what I'm doing. So I have a strong responsibility to protect my relatives inside North Korea. That's why I'm just more worried about than my personal security.
All right. Last question. That's another question.
This whole thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Hyeonseo Lee. I think we're coming to the end of this PechaKucha show. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you so much for Ubud Writers Readers Festival for providing us with the speakers. Thank you for all the speakers. Every single one, and thank you for Ubud team for helping me today. Thank you, and see you at the next Pecha Kucha in January. Thank you.